Good morning, fifth graders. So today we are going to continue looking at our fraction problems. Today we're going to be looking at some word problems. Some of these are going to have different ways that we can solve them, and I'll try to show you some of those different ways. So let's take a look at number one. So number one says George weeded 1/5 of the garden, and Summer weeded some too. When they finished, 2/3 of the garden still needed to be weeded. What fraction of the garden did Summer weed? So there's two different ways that we can solve this problem. So let's take a look at the first way that we can do this. So let me get my pen out. So if we think of our garden as being kind of this big rectangle, we know that George weeded about 1/5 of it. So I'm going to put a G and I'm going to put 1/5. And then 2/3 of it is still needing to be weeded. So we'll put 2/3 over here. And then Summer, we don't know. We need to figure out how much Summer did. So we can take our whole garden, we can call that 1. So we need to take away 1/5, and we need to take away 2/3. So we're subtracting 1 minus 1/5 minus 2/3. So to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to turn my 1 into 5/5, because then I can subtract my 1/5. So this is going to become 5/5 minus 1/5 minus 2/3. When I subtract my 5/5 minus my 1/5, then I get 4/5 minus 2/3. So now I can solve this with numbers, right? We kind of talked a little bit about this before. Your two fractions have to have a common denominator. If I look at 5 and 3, I can multiply those together and get 15. So I'm going to go down to kind of the next row so I have some more space. So I multiply both of my numbers, my 4 and my 5 in my first fraction, by 3, and I get 12/15. And then I have 2/3. I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom, my numerator and my denominator, both by 5, and I get 10/15. Then I subtract and I have 2/15 left over. So Summer weeded 2/15 of the garden. The other way that we can do this is by using the fraction models that we did yesterday. So we can make our 1/5. Actually, let me do this in a different color. Make it a little bit easier to see that. So we have our 1/5. And then we have from Summer, the rest of our garden, we have our 2/3. We're going to shade those in. We have our 2/3. We have our 1/5. And then we're going to divide those to make our 15ths. So then we're going to add those together and then subtract that from 1. So we have 10/15 and we have 3/15. So total, we're going to have 13/15. So then we're going to take this and subtract that from 1. So if we think of 1 as being 15/15, we subtract our 13/15, then we get our 2/15 that Summer weeded. So there are two different ways that you can solve these problems. You can subtract just using the numbers, or you can use the boxes. Let's take a look at the next problem. So number two says, Jing spent 1/3 of her money on a pack of pens, 1/2 of her money on a pack of markers and 1/8 of her money on a pack of pencils. What fraction of her money is left? So the first thing that we need to do is we need to add each of those things together, and then we will know kind of what fraction she's got left. So we have our 1/3. Let me switch my colors back, sorry. We have our 1/3, we have 1/2, and we have 1/8. So we're going to add all of these together to figure out how much she has left. So I'll do it with numbers first, and then we'll kind of break it down and do it with the boxes. So I'm going to start by changing my 1/2, since 1/2 is kind of an easy number to make an equivalent fraction with. I'm going to make my 1/2 into an equivalent fraction over 8 so that I can add it to my 1/8. So I'll be left with 1/3 plus 4/8 plus 1/8. So that means I'm going to be adding these two numbers together. So I have 1/3 plus 5/8. And now I can find my common denominator, which in this case I'm going to say is 24, just because it's easy to just multiply by the 3 and by the 8. So 1/3 will multiply times 8. So 1 times 8 gives us 8. 3 times 8 gives us 24. And then 5/8 we will multiply times 3. So 5/8 gives, 5 times 3 gives us 15. And 8 times 3 gives us 24. And then we add together. So we're going to add our 8 24ths and our 15 24ths. I'm running out of room, so I'm going to bring this down here. Actually, no, I can put that up there. Sorry about that. So I add my 8 plus my 15, which gives me 23 24ths. So this is how much money Jean spent. She spent 23 24ths of her money. So then that means we need to figure out how much she has left. So this is kind of the first part of our problem. So now we need to subtract 23 24ths from 1. So we can think of 1 as being 24 24ths. We subtract our 23 24ths, and we get 1 24th. So she has 1 24th of her money left. We could also do this with pictures. The other way that we could do this is we can kind of subtract each of these things, or whatever she has left. So if she spent 1/3 of her money on a pack of pens, we can subtract 2/3 minus 1/2. We can do it that way. So there's kind of different ways that we can solve these problems. This is just one way. Let's take a look at number 3. So number 3 says, Shelby bought a 2-ounce tube of paint. She used 2/3 ounce to paint water, 3/5 ounce to paint the sky, and some to paint the flag. After that, she has 2/15 ounces left. How much paint did she use to paint her flag? So what we need to do is figure out how much she used to paint her flag. So if in total she's got 2 ounces, so I have kind of 1 ounce and 2 ounces. We'll say that each one of those is an ounce. She used 2/3 of it. So I'm going to kind of cut this into thirds. So this is what she used. Oops. This is what she used to paint the water. Right, so 2/3. And then she used 3/5 to paint the sky. So we'll divide into fifths. Oops, sorry, those are not quite big enough. She used 3/5 to paint the sky. Oops. So that's 3/5. And then she has 2 fifteenths left. So in order to make fifteenths, we're going to divide our last 2 fifths into 3. So we're going to divide them by 3. I'm going to change my color to do that. So then this would make them fifteenths, right? If we divided the whole thing in each one of those fifths into 3 more segments, then we get fifteenths. So 2 of those is what she has left. 2 fifteenths. So then that means this is for the flag. Actually, I'm going to highlight the pieces for the flag. That'll make it a little bit easier to see. So we have 1/3 for the flag, we have a 5th for the flag, and then we have a 15th for the flag. So we just need to add all of those together, and then we can figure out how much she used to paint her flag. So we're going to add, we have 1/3, and then we could say 1/5 and then 1/15, or we can add those fifteenths together, so we have 4 fifteenths. So we need to add those two together. We can't add them together like they are because we don't have a common denominator, but what we can do is multiply our 1/3 times 5, because 3 times 5 will give us 15, and then our 4 fifteenths can stay the same. So we're going to multiply the 1 times 4 and the 3, or sorry, not times 4, I'm sorry about that, times 5. That gives us 5 fifteenths plus 4 fifteenths, which gives us 9 fifteenths. So she has 9 fifteenths of an ounce left over. If we wanted to reduce this into a simpler or a smaller equivalent fraction, we could divide the top and the bottom both by 3. Both of them have a common factor of 3. So 9 fifteenths or 3/5 ounces left over. Either one of those answers is correct. So I want you to take a second and I want you to take a look at number 4, and I want you to try to work that out on your own. If you get stuck, pop back in, or when you're done, pop back on to check your answer. So go ahead and pause here, work out number 4, and then come back to check your work. All right, so let's take a look here. Jim sold 3/4 gallons of lemonade, and Dwight sold some too. Together they sold 1 5/12 gallons. Who sold more lemonade, Jim or Dwight? And we want to know how much more. So we kind of have a 2-part question here. So there's a couple of different ways that we can solve this. I'm only going to show you one of them, but if you solved it in a different way, that's great. So let's take a look. If we have, it's kind of like our tape diagrams. So this is going to represent the total amount of lemonade that they sold. So altogether, this is 1 5/12 gallons of lemonade. So we know that Dwight sold 3/4 gallons. I'll put a D there. Or sorry, not Dwight, Jim. I'm sorry about that. I misread that. So Jim sold 3/4 gallons, and we don't know how much Dwight sold. We need to figure out how much Dwight sold. So we can think of this as being 3/4 plus something is equal to 1 5/12. So we need to figure out what that something is. First, we have a couple of things we need to do. First, we need to have both of our numbers with a common denominator. Well, a common multiple of 4 and 12 is 12. So we can change our 3/4 into a fraction over 12. To do that, we'll have to multiply our numerator and our denominator both by 3. So then this becomes 9/12 plus something equals 1 5/12. But before we continue, I want to change that 1 5/12 into an improper fraction. So I know that 1 is going to be equal to 12/12. So I'm going to do this kind of over here. So I know that 1 is equal to 12/12, and then we have our 5/12. which gives me 17/12. So that's going to be equal to our 1 5/12. So 9/12 plus something is equal to 17/12. So 9 plus something gives us 17. Well, I know that 9 minus 17 gives me 8. So that tells me that 9/12 plus 8/12 is equal to 17/12. So it looks like Dwight sold less lemonade than Jim, just by a little bit. So it looks like Jim sold more, and he sold 1/12 more than Dwight. Right? Because 9/12 is 1/12 more than 8/12. All right, last problem. Let's take a look at number 5. So number 5 says, Leonard spent 1/4 of his money on a sandwich. He spent 2 times as much on a gift for his brother as on some comic books. He had 3/8 of his money left. What fraction did he spend on comic books? Go ahead and pause here, take a look at this problem, try working it out on your own. If you get stuck, pop back on or pop back in to check your answer. Alrighty, so just like with all of our word problems, we have a couple of different ways that we can solve this. So I'm going to show you one of them. So I'm going to make a box to represent kind of all of the money that Leonard has. Okay, so this is, oops, sorry about that. This is all, I'm just going to call him L, all his money. So we know that he has 3/8 of his money left over. So we're going to work in eighths, since 8 is also a multiple of 4. So we should be safe working with eighths. So I am going to go ahead and divide in half. And then I'll divide into fourths going this way. So now I have my eighths. So he has 1/4 of his money on a sandwich. So 1/4 would be like one whole kind of piece of it going this way. So 2/8. So this is how much money Leonard spent on his sandwich. So I'm going to label that with an S. Then he had 3/8 of his money left over. So he had 1, 2, 3/8 of his money left over. So I'm going to label this with LO. Left over. Left over. So then he has 2 times as much that he spent on a gift for his brother as he spent on some comic books. So we know that the comic books, I'll say comics, is equal to 2 times however much he spent on the gift. We have 3 pieces left over. So that must mean that the gift is going to be equal to 1 piece, since 1 times 2 gives us 2, and that's what we'll have left over. So this 1 piece is the gift for his brother. And then we have 2 pieces for the comics. So if we take a look at this, we can see that he spent 2/8 on comics. Or he also could spend 1/4 on comics. Those are equivalent fractions. So we have 2 different, two different fractions, but they are equivalent. So he spent either 2/8 or 1/4 of his money on comic books. Alrighty, so if you have any questions or run into any problems, please let me know. I'm here and I'm happy to help. So is Miss Sally. Super quick, I do have a secret word for you, and then we'll take a look at your independent practice. Your secret word today is frozen. And then let's take a look at your independent practice really quick. You only have 2 questions. You have 2 word problems. Christine baked a pumpkin pie. She ate 1/6 of the pie. Her brother ate 1/3 of it and gave the leftovers to his friends. What fraction of the pie did he give to his friends? And then Liang went to the bookstore. He spent 1/3 of his money on a pen and 4/7 on books. What fraction did he have left? I know that the instructions say to solve using the RDW strategy. Since we didn't really talk about what the RDW strategy is, but we did talk about how there are different ways that we can solve these, you can go ahead and just cross that out. You can solve your word problems in any way that works best for you, whether it's using numbers, kind of like we did in number 1, using pictures, whatever is going to work best for you. Just make sure that you show your work. Remember, if you have any questions, you run into any problems, you get stuck at all on your independent practice, please let me know or let Miss Sally know. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll see you all later.